Certainly, China has tried to expand its influence in Southeast Asia, like other major countries. All countries do that. The U.S. also has its soft power, public diplomacy. Japan does, Korea does. There's Japan Foundation, Korea Foundation. So we have to bear in mind that China is doing something that other major countries also do. However, China does it in a different way. It's not a conventional way. It's a way that we're not used to, and sometimes it's not transparent and accountable and visible. So this is, I think, the unease and the anxiety, the reservations in Southeast Asia have to do with this, that China is not transparent, that it is opaque, that what it is doing has a certain agenda that we are not access to, that we cannot understand, that we're not trustful of. So that's one thing I think we have to get across. It's doing something that others do, but it's doing something that others do, but not in the same transparent way. Beyond that, yes, there are different ways that China has been growing its influence. We can see in Australia and New Zealand very vividly, there's a lot of pushback against China and a backlash, a bill in Australia. In Southeast Asia, it's more mixed. It depends which countries in different ways. So smaller countries tend to have a tougher time dealing with China. So Cambodia, for example, Brunei, Laos would have less leverage. Malaysia, we see something very different. So after the election last May, we have a new government in Malaysia and they've pushed back very hard against China. Thailand has shown some ambivalence after initial period of the military coup, very close to China. But then after Thailand, the Thai military government saw that China had very tough terms on the infrastructure projects and so on. So they backed away a little bit, and the Thai government went to Japan, went to the US. And the US has President Trump now. He's different than Obama. He's more about interest, not about values. So that allows for more hedging, more counterbalancing in Southeast Asia. Generally, the bigger countries in Southeast Asia have more space to work with. Smaller countries, less. Like Singapore, for example, or Brunei, Cambodia, and Laos. These three countries also not just smaller but poorer as well. Brunei is not, but Laos and Cambodia. Singapore has some financial muscle to work with. And then you can also see another trend. The more authoritarian the governments, the more China has influence over, right? So if you have a military government in Thailand, China has some influence over that. Authoritarian governments in Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Brunei, and so on. But more democratic government, perhaps Indonesia, perhaps Malaysia with the election and new government, China has less influence, and the Western countries have more influence. This is because when these countries become more authoritarian, they become more alienated by the Western countries. Sometimes they face Western sanctions, but China can embrace any regime. So those would be the kind of things that we see. Of course, the AIIB, BRI, these are geostrategic schemes to win influence, to win persuasion, through enticement, through inducement, short of coercion and force. So we see a lot of loans, a lot of projects, and then there are other soft power public diplomacy that China also has been doing to expand its influence, like other countries, giving out scholarships, exchanges, military training, Confucius Institutes, and so on. So overall, this is something I think for Southeast Asia is not brand new. The role that China is trying to regain for itself as a kind of the top power, top of the hierarchy in Asia, we've seen that in the ancient past. But for newer countries like Australia and New Zealand, they might find it new.